there'd be this Mexican standoff. And I mean, they've been protecting him for a long time. I didn't think they would throw him to the wolves, but I think they realized public pressure was growing. There was now reputational damage for the monarchy in general. People were asking in the press and elsewhere some difficult questions about royal accountability and privilege. And I think they realized that they needed to get ahead of the story.
Something is happening behind the walls of the British monarchy that the royal family has spent years trying to avoid. Something that sits at the crossroads of scandal, investigation, and fear. And now, for the first time, a respected royal biographer has publicly suggested that Prince Andrew, the king's own brother, may no longer be safe to travel. Not because he is in danger, but because authorities could fear that he might leave the country entirely. According to this expert, Andrew is now a flight risk, and the idea that his passport should be taken away is no longer a fringe opinion. It is a real possibility being discussed in the shadows of the palace. And this is unfolding just as new documents, new emails, and new claims around his previous association with Jeffrey Epstein have resurfaced, reigniting a scandal the royal family desperately hoped was over. This is the story of how a disgraced duke, an approaching eviction, a rumored escape route overseas, and newly released communications have collided into one of the most volatile royal situations of the decade. And today, we're going to uncover every piece of it. Before we dive in, there's something I need to share with you. Over the past few days, thousands have watched these stories unfold, but most haven't subscribed. If you're one of them, I invite you now to join us. Subscribe to Crownverse so you never miss the next chapter in this unfolding royal history. The growing concerns around Prince Andrew's whereabouts did not appear overnight. They have been slowly building, quietly escalating, and cautiously whispered about among commentators who rarely speak so boldly. For years, Andrew has attempted to retreat from public life after the scandal involving Jeffrey Epstein destroyed his reputation and removed him from royal duties. The Queen, during her lifetime, did everything possible to protect the monarchy's public image, but even she could not shield him from consequence. He lost his HRH style. He lost his military affiliations. He lost the right to perform any royal engagements. But perhaps the most symbolic moment of his downfall was when King Charles, shortly after ascending the throne, made it clear that Andrew's future was no longer compatible with the institution's survival. And now, for January approaches, so does his final deadline to leave Royal Lodge, the 30-room residence he has occupied for decades. As Andrew prepares to be removed from the home where he has lived since 2003, a new layer of tension has surfaced. Several tabloids and commentators have repeated a rumor, and it is important to underline that this remains unverified, that Andrew may be considering moving abroad, possibly to the Middle East. One recurring claim suggests that he may have been offered access to a villa belonging to members of the Abu Dhabi royal family. Nothing has been officially confirmed, but the idea itself has caused a wave of speculation. Because if Andrew is under renewed pressure from the United States, and if new documents mentioning him continue to emerge, what would prevent him from choosing a quieter life far away from British jurisdiction? The spark that intensified this conversation came earlier this week. According to multiple reports, new emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate were unsealed and made public. Within those emails, Prince Andrew's name appears again, a detail that adds to an already extensive timeline of interactions between the two men. One of the emails, which several news outlets described but have not been independently verified by British authorities, allegedly contains a statement from Epstein himself referring to a photograph, the infamous image of Prince Andrew standing next to Virginia Giuffre. In this email, Epstein is reported to have said that the photograph was real. This is particularly significant because Andrew, in his 2019 BBC Newsnight interview, claimed not only that he did not recall ever meeting Virginia Giuffre, but that he did not remember taking the photograph at all. To be clear, this email, although widely reported, has not been formally authenticated by the palace or by any investigative bodies. But the very existence of newly released communications mentioning Andrew has reopened old wounds and cast fresh questions on his previous statements. And this is exactly what led Andrew Lownie, the biographer behind entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, to say something unprecedented: that Prince Andrew should be investigated further, and that as a potential flight risk, he should surrender his passport. Lownie's comments were sharp and unusually direct, especially for a royal commentator. He described the new information as the nail in the coffin for Andrew in terms of public trust. He argued that these emerging details, whether ultimately proven or not, widen the gap between Andrew's public statements and the documents being uncovered. He added that there is still much more to emerge, suggesting that the scandal may not be anywhere near its final chapter. And in his view, that alone is reason enough to prevent Andrew from leaving the country. It is important to note that this is not a government position. No UK authority has suggested removing Andrew's passport. This remains purely an expert opinion. But the fact that such an opinion is being discussed publicly shows how dramatically Andrew's position has shifted. Once a senior working royal trusted with ceremonial duties and military commands, he is now a man who some believe should not be allowed to cross a border. And the timing of these statements could not be more dramatic. Andrew is expected to vacate Royal Lodge by the end of January. The palace has not denied this timeline. Instead, they have repeatedly emphasized that Andrew will be moving into a smaller residence on King Charles's private Sandringham estate. This move has been portrayed as temporary, but in truth, its implications are far larger. Removing Andrew from Royal Lodge is not only a logistical decision, it is a symbolic repositioning. It is the monarchy saying, gently but firmly, that Andrew's time at the heart of royal life is over. However, Andrew has reportedly resisted leaving Royal Lodge for months. He is said to be emotionally attached to the property, but with rising maintenance costs, structural issues, and a monarchy tightening its financial footprint, the decision has reached its final stage. Once Andrew leaves, Royal Lodge will almost certainly be repurposed for other members of the family or for major structural renovations. For Andrew, it means stepping into a new phase of life, more isolated, more distant from central power, and more vulnerable to external scrutiny. Now place this moment against the parallel track happening in the United States. It is believed, though details remain unclear, that members of the U.S. Congress have again requested Andrew's presence for questioning. This request is not confirmed by British authorities and has not been acknowledged by the palace. But the idea that an American legislative body wants to hear from a British prince adds significant pressure. If these requests intensify, Andrew's travel becomes an essential factor. And this is precisely why some experts fear that Andrew could choose to leave the UK entirely. The rumors surrounding Abu Dhabi add to this. Allegedly, a villa on a heavily protected estate belonging to the Abu Dhabi royal family has been discussed as a possible safe haven. Again, this claim is unverified and remains within the realm of speculation. No official source has confirmed that such an offer was made. But the Middle East has long been a region where controversial public figures relocate quietly. Its private estates, heavy security, and close ties to members of European aristocracy make it a plausible storyline, which is enough for commentators to question whether Andrew might consider it. But beyond the rumors, there is a more personal and human dimension. Andrew has been living in a state of retreat since 2020. He rarely appears in public. He does not speak to the media. He does not participate in royal events except under strict control. The king has maintained a delicate balance between compassion as a brother and responsibility as a monarch. But the institution's priority is clear: protect the crown at all costs. And Andrew, unfortunately, has become a liability that the palace cannot absorb any longer. Privately, it is believed that the royal family hopes Andrew will quietly settle into a discreet existence away from the spotlight. But the resurgence of emails, the upcoming eviction, and the persistent pressure from the U.S. mean that this situation could escalate again. And that escalation is what worries experts. Because if Andrew feels cornered, uncertain, or exposed, he may decide that remaining in the UK is no longer in his best interest. Whether this would ever happen is unknown, but the conversation around it is loud, sensitive, and increasingly public. There's also a broader question. How will the British public react if Andrew were to leave the country while inquiries about Epstein's past continue to grow? Would the monarchy face backlash for letting him go? Would Parliament intervene? Would international media frame it as an act of escape? These are the questions fueling the narrative that Andrew should remain exactly where he is, in the UK, available for questions, accountable to any future developments. Andrew's legal position is complex. He settled the civil case brought by Virginia Giuffre in 2022, but settlements do not erase public suspicion. Andrew has consistently denied all accusations against him. He has always maintained that he never engaged in the actions he was accused of. He has insisted he did not recall meeting Virginia Giuffre and has questioned the authenticity of the now famous photograph. Those remain his official positions, but new documents, even if unverified or still being analyzed, complicate the public's perception. As for the monarchy itself, the institution is trying to stabilize under King Charles. The king has spent his first years on the throne dealing with health challenges, family tensions, and the blowback from Harry and Meghan's departure. Bringing Andrew back into public life is not an option. The palace understands that the public would reject it. So, Andrew's isolation is both a strategic decision and a protective measure. But if Andrew becomes the center of renewed international attention, especially legal attention, the monarchy will face a challenge it has worked tirelessly to avoid. And this is why experts are now speaking with such urgency. Because whether Andrew chooses to stay quiet in Norfolk or whether he entertains the idea of moving abroad, the consequences could ripple across the entire royal landscape. Another question emerging from commentators is whether Andrew might attempt to negotiate some form of limited rehabilitation. Analysts say this would be nearly impossible. The public mood is firmly against him. Parliament is unlikely to support any form of return, and King Charles is known to prioritize the long-term stability of the monarchy above family loyalty. If Andrew hoped to reintroduce himself into public duties, the window has permanently closed. This leaves Andrew in a precarious situation. He is a prince without duties, a duke without a future, and a resident about to lose his home. He is facing renewed attention from the United States, unverified claims resurfacing in the media, and warnings from experts that he could be viewed as someone who may attempt to distance himself from Britain. It is a combination that no royal in modern history has ever faced. And yet, for all that is said publicly, Andrew himself has remained silent. No statements, no interviews, no direct responses to the new allegations, the emails, or the commentary. This silence leaves a vacuum that speculation quickly fills. And speculation, especially in royal stories, is powerful. It shapes public perception, it influences political pressure, It causes uncertainty even within the palace, and Andrew's silence only amplifies the questions people are already asking. In the coming weeks, attention will heavily shift to Royal Lodge. Observers will look for signs of Andrew preparing to leave. Moving vans, staff changes, repairs being halted, any visible sign of a transition. And as that date approaches, speculation about where he will go next will intensify. Will he truly relocate to a smaller home on the king's estate? Will he attempt to negotiate for more time? Or will he seek privacy far beyond British borders? At the same time, American media will continue to follow the Epstein story, monitoring any new unsealed documents or testimonies. If Andrew is mentioned again, pressure will rise. And if congressional interest becomes more formal, travel becomes a critical factor. This is the scenario experts like Lownie are imagining when they warn that Andrew's passport may become a matter of debate. It is a bizarre and extraordinary moment, the idea of a British prince being advised to remain within the country to avoid complications abroad. But it reflects the harsh reality Andrew now inhabits, a world where every movement, every rumor, and every emerging document carries enormous consequences. Behind the scenes, the royal family will be strategizing. Charles will be consulting with advisors. Courtiers will be preparing contingency plans. The goal will always remain the same: protect the monarchy. If Andrew's situation threatens that, the palace will act decisively, and that may include increasing the distance between Andrew and the central workings of the crown. As for Andrew himself, he is entering a chapter defined by uncertainty. Uncertainty about his living situation, uncertainty about the legal atmosphere around him, uncertainty about what documents might appear next, uncertainty about his public future, and uncertainty about whether remaining in the United Kingdom is his best option or his only option. This story is far from over. The new emails have only deepened the mystery. The expert warnings have only sharpened the stakes. Andrew's upcoming eviction has only accelerated the timeline, and the pressure from across the Atlantic has added an international dimension that the monarchy cannot ignore. The world will be watching closely, and as always, we will be here to decode every chapter of this evolving royal crisis, piece by piece, truth by truth, and rumor by rumor.